Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the warship Iron Thunder, watching the stars through the main screen. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 50 years. It was a short time compared to other species who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The communication panel made a soft beeping sound. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon turned to face his captain. "Sir, we have an urgent message from Admiral Park So-min on Earth. She wants to speak with you right away." Lee Dae-ho nodded. "Put her through." The main screen changed to show Admiral Park So-min sitting in her office on Earth. Her face looked serious and worried. Behind her, Lee Dae-ho could see other officers moving around quickly. "Captain Lee," the Admiral began without any greeting. "We have a major problem. The three biggest empires in the galaxy are working together. They want to destroy humanity completely." Lee Dae-ho felt his stomach drop. The three empires were the most powerful forces in the galaxy. The Valdari hegemony was made up of large reptile-like creatures who had been conquering other species for over 10,000 years. They were known for making slaves out of weaker races and showing no mercy to those who fought back. The Nexus Collective was different, but just as dangerous. They were part machine and part living creature. They believed that pure biological life was weak and stupid. They wanted to either change all living things into machines or destroy them completely. The third empire was called the Astral Dominion. These beings were made of pure energy and thought they were better than all other life in the galaxy. They believed they had the right to rule over everyone else because they were the oldest and most advanced. "How bad is it?" Lee Dae-ho asked. "Admiral." Park So-min's face became even more serious. "They are building the largest war fleet in galactic history. Our spies tell us they have over 10,000 ships. They plan to attack human space in 30 days. Commander Kim Tae-woo, who was standing next to Lee Dae-ho, made a small sound of shock. 10,000 ships? We only have 200 vessels in our entire fleet." The Admiral nodded sadly. "That's right. In a normal fight, we would lose completely. But we have something they don't know about. Captain Lee, your ship is our only hope, Lee." Dae-ho looked around his bridge. The Iron Thunder was different from other human ships. It had been built in secret using new technology that no other species had ever seen. Dr. Choi Mi-young had spent 5 years working on weapons and defenses that could surprise their enemies. "What are my orders?" Lee Dae-ho asked. "You will take the Iron Thunder and stop their fleet before it reaches Earth. I know it sounds impossible, but our scientists believe your ship can do things that will shock the entire galaxy." Engineer Yoon Hee-jin spoke up from her station. "Admiral, the ship's systems are still being tested. We don't know if everything will work correctly in a real battle." Admiral Park So-min looked directly at her through the screen. "Engineer Yoon, if we don't try, humanity will be wiped out completely. The three empires have already told the Galactic Council that humans are too dangerous to exist. They say we are unpredictable and will cause problems for the established order." Lee Dae-ho understood what this meant. For thousands of years, the galaxy had been controlled by the same powerful species. They had their territories, their trade, routes, and their way of doing things. Humanity was new and different. They didn't follow the old rules, and that scared the established powers. "Why now?" Commander Kim Tae-woo asked. "What made them decide to work together against us?" The Admiral pulled up some documents on her screen. 3 weeks ago, human traders stopped a Valdari slave ship that was attacking a peaceful colony. Our diplomats also refused to accept the Nexus Collective's demand that we allow them to study our brains. And last week we told the Astral Dominion that we would not bow down to them when they visited our space stations. Lee Dae-ho smiled slightly. Humans had always been stubborn about their freedom and the freedom of others. They would not accept slavery, forced changes to their bodies, or demands to worship other beings as gods. The three empires see us as a threat to their power, the Admiral continued. They believe that if they don't destroy us now, other species might start following our example. They can't allow that to happen. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon turned from his communication station. Admiral, are we going to fight this battle alone? What about our allies in the Galactic Council? Admiral Park So-min's face became angry. The Council voted to expel humanity yesterday. They were too afraid to stand up to the three empires. Some species that we thought were our friends voted against us to save themselves. The bridge became quiet. Every crew member understood what this meant. Humanity was completely alone against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They had no allies, no safe places to hide, and nowhere to run. Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system from her laboratory deep inside the ship. Captain, I need to tell you about our weapons. We have technology that works in ways the aliens have never seen before. Go ahead, Doctor, Lee Dae-ho replied. Our quantum torpedoes can pass through their energy shields like they don't exist. Our gravity well generators can create small black holes that will crush their ships. And our most powerful weapon is the dimensional cannon. It can remove matter from existence completely. Commander Kim Tae-woo looked excited. Those weapons sound incredible, but will they work against so many enemy ships? Dr. Choi Mi-young was quiet for a moment before answering. I don't know. We've only tested them on small targets, but the theory is solid. If we can surprise them, we might have a chance. Admiral Park So-min leaned forward on the screen. Captain Lee, I won't lie. To you, this mission is probably suicide. But if you don't try, Earth and all human colonies will be destroyed within weeks. Billions of people are counting on you and your crew. Lee Dae-ho looked at each of his officers. He saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. These were good people who had joined the space fleet to protect humanity and explore the stars. None of them had expected to face a war that could end their entire species. Admiral, Lee Dae-ho said finally, the Iron Thunder will intercept the enemy fleet. We'll show the galaxy what humans can do when they're pushed too far. Engineer Yoon Hye-jin started checking her systems. Captain, I recommend we meet them at the Kepler Junction. It's a narrow area between star systems where their large fleet won't be able to spread out effectively. Commander Kim Tae-woo nodded in agreement. That's a good strategic position. We can hit them while they're bunched together and then use the asteroid fields for cover. Admiral Park So-min stood up from her chair. Good luck, Captain. The hopes and prayers of humanity go with you. The communication ended, and the bridge was quiet again. Lee Dae-ho looked out at the stars, knowing that in a few days, those stars might be filled with enemy ships coming to destroy everything he cared about. All hands, prepare for departure, he announced to the entire ship. We're going to war. The Iron Thunder turned away from the peaceful star system where it had been conducting tests. Its destination was the Kepler Junction, where one human ship would face an enemy fleet larger than anything in galactic history. The fate of humanity now rested on the shoulders of Captain Lee Dae-ho and his crew. They were about to show the galaxy that humans fight differently than any other species, and that sometimes the biggest threat comes in the smallest package. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a sea of different shapes and colors. At the center of it all stood Ambassador, Kang Soo-jin, the human representative, facing the three most powerful beings in the galaxy. Fleet Marshal Vextaler of the Valdari hegemony was the first to speak. His massive reptilian form towered over the podium, scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The evidence is clear," he hissed, his voice carrying across the hall. "Humans have repeatedly interfered with lawful Valdari operations. They have attacked our ships and freed slaves that were legally acquired." Supreme Node Omega-7 of the Nexus Collective stepped forward next. The being was a disturbing mixture of metal and flesh, with glowing red eyes that seemed to scan everything around it. "Humanity refuses to accept logical improvements to their biological limitations," it said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "They resist the natural evolution toward perfection. This makes them a virus in the galactic order." Finally, high radiance. Zephyrion of the Astral Dominion spoke, the energy being appeared as a shifting mass of light and color, beautiful but alien. "These newcomers show no respect for their betters," it said, its voice like music mixed with thunder. "They refuse to acknowledge the natural hierarchy that has maintained peace for millennia." Ambassador Kang Soo-jin stood alone at the defendant's podium. She was a small woman compared to the massive aliens around her, but her voice was steady and strong. "Honored representatives," she began, "humanity has done nothing but defend innocent people and maintain our own freedom. We have attacked no one who did not attack us first." "Lies," roared Fleet Marshal Vextaler. "Your species freed an entire cargo ship of slaves. These were valuable assets that my people had spent considerable resources to acquire." Kang Soo-jin's eyes flashed with anger. They were people, not cargo, children and families who had been taken from their homes. "Humanity will always stand against slavery, no matter who practices it." A murmur went through the crowd. Many species in the gallery had been victims of Valdari slave raids, but none had ever dared to speak against them openly. Supreme Node Omega-7 projected a holographic display into the center of the chamber. "Observe the biological inefficiencies of human physiology," it said. "Short lifespan, limited processing power, emotional instability. Yet they refuse our offer to improve them. This irrationality threatens galactic stability. We refuse because we choose to remain human," Kang Soo-jin replied. "We don't consider our emotions or our short lives to be flaws. They make us who we are." High radiance. Zephyrion's light grew brighter. "Your species has existed for barely a moment in galactic terms, yet you presume to judge civilizations that have ruled the stars since before your world had complex life. This arrogance cannot be tolerated." The vote was called quickly. One by one, species after species voted to expel humanity from the Galactic Council. Some did it out of fear, others out of greed, hoping to gain favor with the three empires. Few abstained, but none voted to support humanity. As the final count was announced, Fleet Marshal Vextalar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The Galactic Council has spoken. Humanity is declared a threat to galactic peace and stability. You have 7 days to leave all non-human systems or be removed by force." Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Park So-min stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council. The chamber was much smaller than the Galactic Council Hall, but the tension was just as thick. World leaders from every continent sat in grim silence as she delivered her report. The galactic community has abandoned us, she said simply. We are now officially enemies of the three most powerful empires in known space. Their combined fleet will reach human space in exactly 27 days. President Chen Wei-Ming of the Pacific Federation leaned forward. Admiral, can our fleet stand against them in a conventional battle? Admiral Park So-min shook her head. Absolutely not. They have 10,000 ships with technology that is centuries ahead of most of our fleet. In a direct confrontation, we would be destroyed within hours. Then what options do we have? Asked Chancellor Martinez of the European Union. We have one ship, the Admiral replied. The Iron Thunder, under Captain Lee Dae-ho's command. It carries experimental weapons that might give us a chance. General Thompson of the North American Alliance stood up. One ship against 10,000? Admiral, that's not a strategy, that's suicide. Admiral Park So-min brought up a holographic display showing the Iron Thunder. This isn't an ordinary ship, General. Dr. Choi Mi-young and her team have developed weapons based on completely new principles. The enemy has never seen anything like them. Dr. Choi Mi-young herself appeared on the main screen from her laboratory aboard the Iron Thunder. She looked tired but determined. Council members, she began, our weapons work by manipulating the fundamental forces of physics in ways that alien technology cannot defend against. Explain, demanded President Chen. Our quantum torpedoes exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can pass through energy shields because the shields only exist in normal space. Our gravity well generators create localized black holes that can crush the strongest armor, and our dimensional cannon can erase matter from existence by removing it from our reality entirely. The room was silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just new weapons. They represented a completely different approach to warfare. Chancellor Martinez spoke first. Doctor, these weapons sound incredibly powerful. But can one ship really use them against such a large fleet? Dr. Choi Mi-young hesitated before answering. The weapons work perfectly in our tests, but we've never faced anything like this enemy. Fleet. They have shields, armor, and weapons that we've only studied from old sensor readings. I honestly don't know if we can win. Admiral Park So-min stepped forward. The Iron Thunder is our only hope. Captain Lee Dae-ho has the best tactical mind in our fleet, and his crew has trained specifically for this type of mission. If anyone can do the impossible, it's them. Back on the Iron Thunder, Captain Lee Dae-ho was meeting with his senior officers in the main briefing room. The holographic display showed the enemy fleet's projected route and composition. Commander Kim Tae-woo pointed to various sections of the display. Sir, intelligence reports indicate they have 300 dreadnoughts, 800 heavy cruisers, 2,000 destroyers, and over 6,000 support vessels. Each dreadnought alone has more firepower than our entire home fleet. Engineer Yoon Hye-jin looked up from her technical reports. Captain, our ship's systems are performing well, but I'm worried about sustained combat. If we have to fight for hours, some of our experimental systems might overload. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon added his concerns. Sir, we'll be completely cut off from any support. If something goes wrong, there's no rescue coming. Captain Lee Dae-ho studied the display for a long moment. The enemy fleet was massive, well-armed, and experienced. His ship was untested, experimental, and alone. By every measure of military strategy, this mission was impossible. Dr. Choi, he said finally, how many shots do we get with the dimensional cannon? 3, maybe 4, if I push the power systems to their limits. she replied through the communication system. After that, we'll need several hours to recharge. And the quantum torpedoes? We have 50 warheads total. Each one should be able to destroy or disable an enemy cruiser. Commander Kim Tae-woo did quick calculations in his head. Sir, even if every shot hits perfectly, we can only destroy about 60 enemy ships. That leaves nearly 10,000 still fighting. Captain Lee Dae-ho smiled grimly. Then we'll have to make sure they're the right 60 ships. If we can take out their command vessels and create enough chaos, the rest of their fleet might break apart. Engineer Yoon Hye-jin looked worried. Captain, what if our weapons don't work as expected? What if they have defenses we haven't thought of? Then we adapt, Lee Dae-ho replied. That's what humans do best. We find new solutions when the old ones don't work. The meeting ended with everyone understanding the reality of their situation. They were about to face impossible odds with untested weapons and no backup plan. But they also understood that failure meant the end of human civilization. As the Iron Thunder traveled toward its rendezvous with destiny at the Kepler Junction, Captain Lee Dae-ho stood alone on the bridge. The stars ahead looked peaceful, but he knew that soon they would be filled with enemy ships intent on destroying everything he cared about. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Each of them had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not survive. But they also knew that sometimes the only way to preserve what you love is to risk everything to defend it. The countdown to battle had begun. The Kepler Junction was a vast area of space where 3 star systems met. Ancient asteroid fields drifted slowly through the region, creating a maze of rocky debris that had been there for millions of years. It was the perfect place for an ambush, if you only had one ship. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the sensor readings as the Iron Thunder hid in the shadow of a massive dead planet. The ship's stealth systems made them nearly invisible, but he knew they would only get one chance to surprise the enemy. Contact, Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon announced quietly. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. It's the enemy. Fleet, sir. The main screen lit up with thousands of glowing dots as the alien fleet emerged from their jump. The sight was overwhelming. Ship after ship appeared until space itself seemed crowded with enemy vessels. Dreadnoughts the size of small cities, cruisers bristling with weapons, and countless smaller ships filling every available space. Commander Kim Tae-woo whistled softly. Sir, they're even bigger than our intelligence reports suggested. Some of those dreadnoughts are over 5 kilometers long. At the center of the massive fleet, 3 enormous command ships took position. The Valdari flagship Dominance was a massive black vessel covered in armor plating and weapon turrets. The Nexus Collective's ship, Node Prime, looked like a geometric nightmare of metal and crystal. The Astral Dominion's vessel, Eternal Radiance, glowed with pure energy and seemed to shift its shape constantly. On the Bridge of Dominance, Fleet, Marshal Vextaler studied the tactical displays with satisfaction. His yellow eyes gleamed as he counted the ships under his command. 10,307 vessels, he hissed to his subordinates. The largest war fleet in galactic history. Supreme Node Omega-7 appeared as a hologram from Node Prime. Query: are all systems ready for the extermination protocol? Affirmative, replied High Radiance Zephyrion from Eternal Radiance. The human colonies will be reduced to basic particles within 72 hours. Fleet Marshal Vextaler activated the fleet communication system. All ships, maintain formation as we proceed to the first human system. Total destruction of all human assets is authorized. Leave nothing alive. Suddenly, A new contact appeared on their sensors. A single ship emerged from behind the dead planet, moving slowly toward their massive fleet. "Sir," reported the Valdari sensor officer, "one human vessel approaching. It appears to be transmitting a message." Fleet Marshal Vextalar laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "One ship? They've sent one ship to surrender to us?" The message appeared on all three command ships simultaneously. Captain Lee Daeho's face filled their screens, his expression calm and determined. "I am Captain Lee Daeho of the human warship Iron Thunder," he said clearly. "You have threatened my people and invaded our space. This is humanity's answer to your ultimatum." Supreme Node Omega 7's mechanical voice carried amusement. Observation: one vessel against 10,000. Conclusion: humans are even more illogical than calculated. High radiance. Zephyrion's energy form pulsed with colors that indicated contempt. This display of feudal courage is almost worthy of respect. Almost. Fleet Marshal Vextalar opened a communication channel to the Iron Thunder. "Human Captain, you have one chance to surrender. Submit to boarding, and your death will be quick." Captain Lee Daeho's response was immediate. "I have a counteroffer. Leave our space now, and we might let some of you live." The alien commanders looked at each other through their communication links. This human was either insane or incredibly brave. Either way, he would die quickly. "All ships," Fleet Marshal Vextalar commanded. "Destroy that vessel. Show them the price of defiance." Over 100 enemy ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile salvos streaked toward the Iron Thunder. The alien commanders expected to see the human ship vaporized instantly. Instead, they watched in shock as the weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. The Iron Thunder flickered and shimmered like a reflection on water, and the entire barrage missed completely. "What happened?" roared Fleet Marshal Vextalar. "Why didn't our weapons hit?" On the Iron Thunder's bridge, Engineer Yoon Hye-jin smiled grimly. "Dimensional phase shift holding steady, Captain. Their weapons can't touch us while we're partially existing in parallel space." "Excellent work," Captain Lee Daeho replied. "Dr. Choi, are the quantum torpedoes ready?" "Torpedoes loaded and targeted, sir," came the reply from the weapons laboratory. "Recommend firing pattern alpha against their front formations." Fire. The Iron Thunder's first salvo was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 50 torpedo-like objects launched from the human ship, but instead of traveling through normal space, they seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The alien ship's sensors couldn't track them properly. "Incoming weapons!" shouted a Valdari officer. "But they're not following normal physics." The alien fleet's defensive systems activated automatically. Energy shields flared to life around hundreds of ships. Point defense systems fired frantically at targets they couldn't properly see. The quantum torpedoes passed through the energy shields like they weren't there. They penetrated the heavy armor plating as if it was empty air. Then they exploded inside the enemy ships' hulls. 50 enemy cruisers simply disintegrated from within. Their hulls cracked open like eggs as explosions tore through their internal structures. Atmosphere and debris streamed out into space as the massive vessels broke apart. The alien fleet fell silent. In one attack, the humans had destroyed 50 ships without taking any damage in return. Their weapons had completely ignored the aliens' most advanced defenses. "Impossible," whispered Supreme Node Omega 7. "No weapon can penetrate our shield technology." Fleet Marshal Vextalar's voice was filled with rage. All ships converge on that human vessel, overwhelm it with sheer numbers. Thousands of alien ships began moving toward the Iron Thunder, forming a massive sphere of vessels that tried to surround the lone human ship. Commander Kim Tae-woo monitored the enemy movements on his tactical display. "Sir, they're trying to box us in. At this rate, we'll be surrounded in 15 minutes. Captain Lee Dae-ho nodded calmly. "Then we won't be here in 15 minutes. Yoon, prepare the gravity well generators." Engineer Yoon, Hyejin's fingers flew over her controls. "Gravity wells charged and ready, Captain. Warning, using 3 simultaneously will strain our power systems." "Do it. 3 areas of space around." The alien fleet suddenly began to distort. The fabric of reality itself seemed to bend and twist as artificial gravity wells formed. The effect was invisible at first, then became terrifyingly obvious as nearby alien ships began to be pulled toward the gravity sources. "Emergency maneuvers!" screamed the Valdari fleet commander. "All ships avoid the gravity anomalies!" But it was too late. The artificial black holes were already pulling in everything around them. Alien cruisers and destroyers were dragged helplessly toward the gravity wells, their engines unable to overcome the incredible force. As the ships were pulled closer, the gravity became stronger. Metal hulls began to creak and groan under the stress. Then they started to collapse. Massive warships that had been built to last for centuries were crushed like tin cans as the gravity wells compressed them into tiny balls of twisted metal. 3 entire formations of enemy ships simply vanished, reduced to dense spheres of matter, no larger than a person. The alien fleet was in chaos. Ship commanders screamed conflicting orders over the communication channels. Some vessels tried to retreat while others pushed forward. The perfect formation that had looked so impressive was falling apart. "Status report," Captain Lee Dae-ho requested calmly. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon checked his instruments. "Enemy fleet has lost approximately 300 ships total. They're pulling back to regroup." Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, the weapons performed better than expected. The quantum torpedoes worked perfectly, and the gravity wells exceeded their design specifications." Commander Kim Tae-woo looked at the tactical display with amazement. "Sir, we just took on 10,000 enemy ships and came out without a scratch. They lost 300 vessels, and we're completely undamaged." Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the alien fleet retreating to a safer distance. They were regrouping, probably trying to figure out how to fight an enemy whose weapons worked in ways they had never seen before. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "Now they know we're not an easy target. The real battle is about to start." Engineer Yoon Ha-jin checked her power readings. "Captain, all systems are operating normally. The experimental technology is holding up well under combat conditions." "Good," Lee Dae-ho replied, "because I have a feeling they're about to throw everything they have at us." On the enemy command ships, the 3 leaders were having an emergency conference. For the first time in their long careers, they had encountered weapons that their technology couldn't understand or defend against. "This changes everything," admitted High Radiant Zephyrion. "These humans have capabilities we never detected." Supreme Node Omega-7 processed the battle data rapidly. Analysis: human weapons operate on unknown scientific principles. Recommendation: deploy maximum force to overwhelm their defenses. Fleet Marshal Vextaler's eyes burned with fury. "Agreed. Signal all ships to prepare for concentrated assault. I want that human vessel destroyed. The alien fleet spread out across the Kepler Junction like a vast net. Fleet Marshal Vextalar had learned from the first attack. Instead of keeping his ships in tight formations, he scattered them across millions of kilometers of space. The humans would not catch large groups of ships together again. "New strategy," he announced to his fleet commanders. "The human vessel uses weapons we don't understand, but it's still just one ship. We'll surround it from all directions and attack continuously. Eventually, their defenses will fail." Captain Lee Dae-ho studied the new enemy formation on his tactical display. The aliens had divided their massive fleet into smaller groups that were approaching from dozens of different angles. It was a smart move that would make his area effect weapons less useful. "They're learning," Commander Kim Tae-woo observed, "but they're also giving us new opportunities. Those smaller groups are more vulnerable to focused attacks." Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system from her laboratory. "Captain, I've been analyzing the enemy ship's energy signatures. Each empire uses different shield frequencies. I can adjust our quantum torpedoes to be more effective against specific targets." "Do it," Lee Dae-ho replied. "Kim, pick out the most dangerous enemy groups. We'll hit them fast and move on before the others can respond." Engineer Yoon Hee-jin checked her power readings. "Captain, the stealth systems are working perfectly. As long as we stay near the asteroid fields, their sensors can't get a solid lock on us." The Iron Thunder moved like a ghost through the floating rocks and debris. Its advanced stealth technology made it nearly impossible to detect when it wasn't actively firing weapons. The massive alien ships were too big to hide effectively in the asteroid field, giving the smaller human vessel a major advantage. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon monitored the enemy communications. "Sir, they're getting frustrated. I'm hearing lots of angry voices on their command channels." On the Valdari flagship Dominance, Fleet Marshal Vextalar slammed his clawed fist on the command console. "Where is that ship? How can one vessel hide from 10,000? His sensor officer looked nervous. "Sir, the asteroid field is interfering with our scans. The human ship appears to be using some kind of advanced stealth technology." Then blast. "The asteroids!" Vextalar roared. "Clear the entire field if necessary." Supreme Node Omega-7's voice came through the communication system. "Negative. Destroying the asteroid field would require significant time and ammunition. The humans are using our size against us." The Iron Thunder struck again without warning. A formation of Nexus collective ships that had been moving through a clear area suddenly found quantum torpedoes materializing inside their hulls. The mechanical organic hybrids had sensors that were more advanced than the Valdari, but they still couldn't detect weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. 8 Nexus cruisers exploded from within, their combination of metal and flesh scattered across space. The surviving ships in the formation immediately scattered, trying to find cover behind nearby asteroids. "Target eliminated," reported Dr. Choi Mi-young. "The Nexus ships have different internal structures than the Valdari vessels. Our torpedoes caused even more damage than expected." Captain Lee Dae-ho smiled grimly. "Good. Now let's see how the Astral Dominion ships handle them." The Iron Thunder had already vanished back into the asteroid field before the enemy could respond. Its stealth systems made it invisible again, leaving the aliens firing uselessly at empty space. Fleet Marshal Vextalar's rage was growing by the minute. "All ships, form defensive circles. Watch each other's sensor blind spots. That human ship can't hide forever." But the Iron Thunder wasn't hiding. It was hunting. Commander Kim Tae-woo had identified the weakest links in the alien formations. Supply ships, communication vessels, and command cruisers that were trying to coordinate the massive fleet. These ships were less heavily armed than the main battle vessels, but they were essential for keeping the enemy organized. "There," he said, pointing to a group of ships on the tactical display. "Astral Dominion communication array. If we take that out, their whole left flank will lose coordination." The attack came from above the plane of battle, where the alien sensors were not expecting it. The Iron Thunder dropped out of stealth long enough to fire a gravity well generator directly into the middle of the Astral Dominion communication ships. The energy beings had never experienced artificial gravity before. Their ships were designed to exist in normal space, but the gravity well began pulling them into a reality where the laws of physics worked differently. "What is happening to us?" cried one of the Astral Dominion captains as his ship began to stretch and distort. The gravity well didn't just crush the alien ships like it had done to the others. The Astral Dominion vessels were made of pure energy, so the artificial black hole began to drain their power systems. The ships grew dimmer and dimmer until they finally went dark and drifted helplessly in space. "Communication array destroyed," Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon reported. "The left flank is losing coordination. Ships are starting to move without orders. Engineer Yoon Hee-jin brought the Iron Thunder's stealth systems back online, making them invisible again, just as enemy reinforcements arrived at the attack site. The alien ships found nothing but dark, empty Astral Dominion vessels floating in space. Supreme Node Omega-7 processed the attack data with growing concern. Pattern analysis. The humans are targeting command and support vessels. They understand our fleet structure." High radiance. Zephyrion's energy form pulsed with frustrated colors. "They fight like parasites, striking at our weak points and then vanishing before we can respond." Fleet Marshal Vextalar studied the tactical reports. His massive fleet was still largely intact, but the humans were slowly cutting away the vessels that held it together. Communication ships, supply vessels, command cruisers, all the unglamorous but essential ships that made a large fleet function properly. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 37 support vessels in the last hour. The fleet is having trouble maintaining coordination across such a large area." "Then we'll force them to fight us directly," Vextalar decided. "Order all ships to converge on the main asteroid cluster. If they want to hide in there, we'll follow them." The alien fleet began moving toward the largest concentration of asteroids in the region. Thousands of massive warships pushed into the rocky maze, trying to flush out the Iron Thunder. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched them come with satisfaction. "They're making another mistake, Kim. Those big ships aren't designed to fight in confined spaces." Commander Kim Tae-woo nodded. "The asteroids will limit their ability to maneuver, and they'll have to worry about hitting each other if they fire at us." Dr. Choi Mi-young had been working on a new tactical solution. "Captain, I've modified some of our quantum torpedoes. Instead of exploding, they'll create chain reactions in the asteroids around enemy ships." "Explain," Lee Dae-ho requested. "The torpedoes will destabilize the atomic structure of the rocks. When the asteroids explode, they'll create clouds of high-speed debris that will damage nearby ships." Engineer Yoon Hye-jin looked impressed. "So we'll turn the asteroid field itself into a weapon." The Iron Thunder waited until the alien fleet was deep in the asteroid cluster, then began its most devastating attack yet. Modified quantum torpedoes struck asteroids throughout the field, causing massive explosions that sent deadly debris flying in all directions. The alien ships, packed closely together to search for the human vessel, found themselves caught in a storm of high-speed rocks and metal fragments. Their shields could stop energy weapons, but physical objects moving at tremendous speeds caused serious damage. "All ships, "Retreat from the asteroid field," ordered Fleet Marshal Vex Talar as his own flagship shook from multiple impacts. But retreating was easier said than done. The alien ships were large and slow, and they had to navigate carefully around the asteroids to avoid collisions. The explosion debris continued to rain down on them as they tried to escape. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon monitored the enemy losses. "Sir, we've disabled or destroyed over 200 ships in the last attack. They're pulling back to open space. Captain." Lee Dae-ho felt a moment of satisfaction, but he knew this was still just the beginning. "How many ships do they have left?" Commander Kim Tae-woo did quick calculations. "Approximately 9,400 vessels still operational. We've taken down about 6% of their total force." Engineer Yoon Hye-jin checked her systems. Status: "Captain, our experimental weapons are performing excellently. All systems are operating within normal parameters." Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, I'm detecting increased energy readings from the enemy command ships. They might be preparing to use their most powerful weapons." Captain Lee Dae-ho studied the enemy fleet as it regrouped in open space. The alien commanders were probably discussing new strategies, possibly including weapons that they had been holding in reserve. "They're getting desperate," he said to his crew. "Desperate enemies are dangerous, but they also make mistakes. We need to be ready for whatever they try next on the enemy command ships." The three leaders were indeed discussing desperate measures. They had never faced an enemy like this before, one that could strike without warning, ignore their defenses, and disappear. The three command ships moved to the center of the alien fleet formation. Fleet Marshal Vex Talar's Dominance, Supreme Node Omega-7's Node Prime, and High Radiance Zephyrion's Eternal Radiance formed a triangle in space. Around them, thousands of other vessels pulled back to a safe distance. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the enemy movements with growing concern. "They're preparing something big, Kim. Look at how they're positioning their command ships." Commander Kim Tae-woo studied the tactical display. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy buildups from all three vessels. These readings are off the charts." Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon intercepted fragments of enemy communications. "Captain, they're talking about ultimate weapons and final protocols. Whatever they're planning, they think it will end the battle." Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system, filled with urgency. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures that I've never seen before. These weapons could be planet killers or worse." On the Valdari flagship Dominance, Fleet Marshal Vex Talar stood before a massive weapon console that had been sealed since the ship was built. The planet killer beam was the Valdari hegemony's most closely guarded secret, capable of cracking worlds apart with pure destructive force. "Weapon charging," reported his gunnery officer. "Full power in 90 seconds. Meanwhile, on Node Prime, Supreme Node Omega-7 activated the Nexus Collective's reality disruptor. This weapon didn't just destroy matter. It rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area, making existence itself impossible for biological life. "Reality distortion field at 60% and climbing," announced the ship's mechanical voice. "Biological extinction parameters will be achieved in 2 minutes. High radiance." Zephyryon aboard Eternal Radiance prepared the most terrifying weapon of all. The Starforge cannon could ignite fusion reactions in any matter, essentially turning enemy ships into tiny stars that would burn everything around them. "Starforge cannon approaching critical ignition threshold," the energy being announced. "Stellar genesis will commence in 120 seconds. Captain Lee Dae-ho felt the weight of the moment. These three weapons had never been used together before, and for good reason. Their combined power could destroy entire solar systems if they were fired simultaneously. Options? He asked his crew. Engineer Yoon Hae-jin ran calculations frantically. Captain, if we try to run, they'll track us with those weapons. Our speed advantage won't help against something that can hit us across star systems. Commander Kim Tae-woo looked grim. Sir, conventional tactics won't work. We need to do something completely unexpected. Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice carried a note of desperate inspiration. Captain, what if we don't try to avoid the weapons? What if we let them hit us? Explain, Lee Dae-ho said quickly. Time was running out. Our dimensional shields can phase us partially out of normal reality. If I route all power to the shields and push them beyond their design limits, we might be able to exist in parallel space when their weapons fire. Engineer Yoon Hae-jin looked shocked. Doctor, that's never been tested. We could end up trapped between dimensions permanently. Better than being destroyed in this dimension, Dr. Choi Mi-young replied. Captain, it's our only chance. Captain Lee Dae-ho made his decision. Do it. Route all power to the dimensional shields. The Iron Thunder began to shimmer and fade as its experimental shields activated at maximum power. The ship became translucent, like a ghost ship sailing between worlds. Fleet Marshal Vex Thaler watched the human vessel begin to phase out of normal space. Fire now, before they can escape completely! The three ultimate weapons fired simultaneously. The planet-killer beam, a lance of pure destruction, struck the Iron Thunder's position. The reality disruptor created a sphere of impossible physics around the human ship. The Starforge cannon ignited fusion reactions that should have turned everything in the area into a miniature sun. The combined energies were so powerful that they distorted space-time itself. Sensors throughout the region went blind from the overwhelming energy discharge. When the readings finally cleared, the alien commanders expected to see nothing but empty space where the Iron Thunder had been. Instead, they saw the human ship, materializing out of dimensional phase completely undamaged. Impossible! Roared Fleet Marshal Vex Thaler. Nothing can survive those weapons. Captain Lee Dae-ho's voice came across all communication channels. Your turn. Dr. Choi Mi-young had been preparing humanity's ultimate weapon while the aliens focused on their own. The dimensional cannon was charged and ready, its power focused through quantum field generators that could rewrite reality itself. Dimensional. Cannon locked on target, she announced. Firing! The weapon that emerged from the Iron Thunder was unlike anything in the galaxy. It wasn't a beam or a projectile. It was a distortion in the fabric of existence itself. The dimensional cannon didn't destroy its targets. It removed them from reality entirely. Fleet Marshal Vex Thaler saw the strange distortion approaching. His ship. Evasive maneuvers. All power to shields. It didn't matter. The dimensional cannon struck dominance and simply deleted it from existence. The massive Valdari flagship didn't explode or break apart. It ceased to have ever existed. Reality rippled as the universe adjusted to the absence of something that had just been there. Supreme Node Omega-7 tried to process what had happened, but its mechanical brain couldn't understand a weapon that violated the basic laws of cause and effect. Node Prime suffered the same fate as Dominance, vanishing from reality as if it had never been built. High Radiance. Zephyrion's energy form pulsed with terror as the dimensional distortion approached eternal radiance. This is not possible. Energy cannot be destroyed. But the dimensional cannon didn't destroy energy. It removed it from the timeline entirely. Eternal radiance flickered out of existence, leaving only empty space where the massive command ship had been. The alien fleet fell silent. Their three greatest leaders, their most powerful ships, and their ultimate weapons had all been eliminated. In a matter of seconds, thousands of crew members simply no longer existed, and reality itself seemed to have forgotten them. "Status report," Captain Lee Dae-ho requested calmly. Dr. Choi Mi-young checked her instruments. Dimensional cannon fired, successfully. All three enemy command vessels have been removed from this reality. No traces remain. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon monitored the enemy communications. "Sir, their fleet is in complete chaos. Ship commanders are arguing about who's in charge now. Some vessels are trying to retreat." Commander Kim Tae-woo studied the tactical display. "Captain, without their command structure, the enemy fleet is falling apart. Individual ship captains are making their own decisions." Engineer Yoon Hye-jin checked the ship's status. "All systems operational, but the dimensional shields are completely drained. We'll need several hours to recharge them." Captain Lee Dae-ho opened a communication channel to the entire alien fleet. "This is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the Iron Thunder. Your leaders are gone. Your ultimate weapons have failed. You have one choice: surrender now or join your commanders in non-existence." The response was immediate and chaotic. Some alien ships began powering down their weapons systems in surrender. Others tried to flee the battle area. A few hot-headed captains attempted to continue the fight, but they found themselves facing the wrath of their own fleetmates, who had no desire to be erased from reality. Colonel Shin Dong-wook, who had been waiting in the Iron Thunder's boarding bay with his Marine unit, smiled grimly. "Captain, I'm reading multiple alien ships requesting permission to surrender. Looks like we're going to need a lot of prison space." The battle that was supposed to end humanity had instead ended the three greatest empires in the galaxy. The Iron Thunder floated alone among thousands of surrendering alien vessels, proof that sometimes the biggest threat comes in the smallest package. On Earth, Admiral Park So-min received the impossible news. One ship had defeated the largest war fleet in galactic history. The three empires that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were leaderless and broken. "Signal all human ships," she ordered. "Proceed to the Kepler Junction immediately. We have prisoners to process and a galaxy to stabilize." Captain Lee Dae-ho looked out at the stars, now filled with surrendering alien vessels instead of enemies, bent on humanity's destruction. His crew had done the impossible, but he knew this was just the beginning of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. The Iron Thunder had proven that humans could fight when cornered, but now they would have to prove they could lead when victorious. The easy part was over. The hard part, building a lasting peace, was about to begin. Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system one more time. "Captain, I'm detecting ships approaching from human space. The cavalry is finally arriving." "Better late than never," Captain Lee Dae-ho replied with a tired smile. "Signal the fleet. Mission accomplished. Humanity is safe." The greatest naval battle in galactic history was over. Humanity had not just survived, they had emerged as the galaxy's new dominant power. The universe would never be the same again. News of the impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 space stations, and aboard countless ships, beings who had lived in fear of the three great empires suddenly learned that those empires no longer existed. Admiral Park So-min stood on the bridge of her flagship as the human fleet arrived at the Kepler Junction. The sight that greeted them was beyond anything they had imagined. Thousands of alien warships floated motionless in space, their weapons powered down, and their crews waiting for orders from their human captors. "Admiral," reported Captain Yang Jun-ho from the cruiser Soul's Pride, "we're receiving surrender requests from over 8,000 enemy vessels. The remaining ships appear to have fled the battle area." Admiral Park So-min looked at the tactical display showing the massive alien fleet in surrender formation. "And all of this was accomplished by one ship?" "Yes, ma'am," came the reply from Lieutenant Colonel Park Min-soo aboard the destroyer New Busan. "The Iron Thunder is requesting permission to dock for crew rest and resupply." On the Iron Thunder, Captain Lee Dae-ho felt the exhaustion of the last several days finally catching up to him. His crew had performed miracles, but they were still human beings who needed food, sleep, and medical attention. Dr. Choi Mi-young emerged from her laboratory looking tired but satisfied. "Captain, our weapons performed beyond all expectations. The dimensional cannon worked perfectly, though I recommend we don't use it again for at least a month while I study the reality distortions it created." Engineer Yoon Hye-jin submitted her status report. "All systems are functional, but we pushed everything to the absolute limit. The ship needs a complete overhaul before we can fight another major battle." Commander Kim Tae-woo was already working on the logistics of processing. "Thousands of prisoners of war. Sir, we're going to need dozens of ships just to transport all the alien crew members, and we'll need translators for over 50 different languages." Admiral Park So-min's face appeared on the main screen of the Iron Thunder. "Captain Lee, on behalf of humanity and the United Earth Defense Council, I want to thank you and your crew for saving our species." Captain Lee Dae-ho nodded respectfully. "We were just doing our job, Admiral. But this war isn't over yet. We've defeated their fleet. But the three empires still control hundreds of worlds and billions of people." "Not anymore," Admiral Park So-min replied with a slight smile. "That's what I'm calling to tell you. The moment news of your victory reached those worlds, revolution broke out everywhere." Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon had been monitoring galactic communications throughout the day. "Captain, the Admiral is right. I'm receiving reports of uprisings on dozens of worlds. The slave populations are overthrowing their Valdari masters. Nexus collective worlds are shutting down their conversion centers. Astral Dominion territories are declaring independence." The truth was even more dramatic than the reports suggested. For thousands of years, countless species had lived under the rule of the three great empires. They had accepted their subjugation because resistance seemed impossible. But the Iron Thunder had proven that the empires were not invincible. On the Valdari slave world of Keth Prime, the reptilian overseers found themselves facing a population that no longer feared them. The news that Fleet Marshal Vex Talar had been completely erased from existence sent shockwaves through every Valdari outpost. "The humans destroyed the entire command fleet," whispered a Cathari rebel leader to his followers. "If they can defeat the Valdari, so can we." The uprising began at dawn and was over by sunset. Centuries of oppression ended in a single day as the slave population overwhelmed their masters. Similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds throughout. Former Valdari space. In Nexus Collective territory, the forced conversion of biological beings into machine hybrids suddenly stopped. The news that Supreme Node Omega-7 no longer existed caused system-wide malfunctions in the Collective's control networks. Dr. Zara Volkov, a human scientist who had been captured by the Nexus and was scheduled for conversion, found herself free when the conversion facility's systems shut down. "The machines are confused," she told other prisoners. "Their leadership just ceased to exist. They don't know what to do." Within hours, every Nexus facility was either shut down or taken over by the biological populations they had been oppressing. The collective's perfect order collapsed into chaos. Without their supreme leader, the Astral Dominion's territories experienced the most dramatic changes. Entire star systems that had been forced to worship the energy beings as gods suddenly declared their independence. The news that High Radiance Zephyrion had been erased from reality was seen as proof that the astral beings were not divine after all. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. "Admiral, it looks like we didn't just win a battle. We started a galactic revolution." Admiral Park So-min nodded grimly. "Which means we now have a responsibility to help stabilize the situation. The galaxy is looking to humanity for leadership." This was not a role that humanity had sought. They had simply wanted to defend themselves and live in peace. But the reality of their victory meant that they were now the strongest military force in the galaxy, and with that strength came obligations. Commander Kim Tae-woo brought up the strategic implications. "Captain, we're receiving communication, requests from over 200 different species and governments. They all want to know what humanity's intentions are." Dr. Choi Mi-young looked concerned. "Captain, some of these species have been enemies of each other for centuries. Without the three empires keeping them in line, there could be wars breaking out everywhere." Captain Lee Dae-ho made a decision that would affect the entire galaxy. "Open a channel to all ships and all worlds. I want everyone to hear this." His image appeared on screens throughout human space and was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. The man who had single-handedly defeated the greatest war fleet in history was about to address the entire galactic community. "My name is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the human warship Iron Thunder," he began. "Yesterday, the three great empires declared war on humanity and threatened to destroy us completely. Today, those empires no longer exist." The statement was simple, but its implications were enormous. The balance of power that had existed for thousands of years had been completely overturned in a single battle. "Humanity did not seek this war," Captain Lee continued. "We wanted only to live in peace and freedom. But when threatened with extinction, we defended ourselves with everything we had." He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. Now the question becomes, what happens next? Some of you may fear that humanity will become the new oppressor, ruling the galaxy as the three empires did before us. I am here to tell you that this will not happen. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings listened intently to the human captain's words. Humanity offers a different path forward. We believe in freedom for all species, cooperation instead of domination, and justice for those who have been oppressed. Any world or species that seeks peace will find friendship with humanity. Any government that protects its people and respects the rights of others will have our support. The message was clear. Humanity was offering to become the galaxy's protector, not its ruler. But let there be no mistake. Captain Lee's voice became harder, more threatening. Any individual, government, or species that threatens innocent people will face the same fate as the three empires. We have the power to erase threats to galactic peace, and we will use that power when necessary. Admiral Park So-min watched the galactic response to Captain Lee's speech. Within minutes, requests for alliance and protection began flooding in from across the galaxy. Former Empire worlds wanted human guarantees of protection. Independent species offered trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. "Captain," she said through the communication link, "I think you just became the most important person in the galaxy." Captain Lee Dae-ho looked tired. "I never wanted to be important, Admiral. I just wanted to protect my crew and my people." "Sometimes fate chooses us rather than the other way around," Admiral Park So-min replied. "The galaxy needs stability, and right now, humanity is the only force capable of providing it." Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon reported on the ongoing communications. "Captain, we're receiving formal surrender documents from the remaining Valdari fleet. Commanders, the Nexus Collective Worlds are requesting human oversight for their transition to biological independence, and over 50 former Astral Dominion systems want to join a new galactic federation under human leadership." Commander Kim Tae-woo looked overwhelmed. "Sir, we're going from a small spacefaring civilization to a galactic superpower literally, overnight. Do we even have enough people to manage all of this?" Dr. Choi Mi-young had a practical suggestion. "Captain, I recommend we establish a new galactic council with human oversight but local representation. We can't rule the entire galaxy directly, but we can make sure everyone follows basic principles of freedom and justice." Captain Lee Dae-ho nodded. "That's exactly what we'll do. Signal Earth. Tell them to prepare for the biggest diplomatic undertaking in human history." The Iron Thunder had started the day as a single experimental warship fighting impossible odds. It ended the day as the flagship of humanity's new galactic protectorate. The crew that, 3 months after the Battle of Kepler Junction, the galaxy looked completely different. The massive space station Harmony 1 floated in neutral space, serving as the headquarters for the new galactic assembly. Unlike the old Galactic Council that had been dominated by the three empires, this new organization was built on principles of equality and mutual cooperation. Admiral Park So-min walked through the corridors of Harmony 1, observing the incredible diversity of beings working. Together, Cathari engineers who had once been slaves worked alongside former Nexus scientists who had chosen to remain biological. Astral refugees who had rejected their species' claim to divinity collaborated with dozens of other races on peaceful projects. Admiral called Ambassador Kang Soo-jin as she approached. "The morning session of the Assembly is about to begin. We have petitions from 15 new worlds requesting membership." Admiral Park So-min nodded. "Any potential problems?" "Nothing major," Kang replied. "Most of the applications are from former Empire worlds that want protection and trade agreements. There's one interesting case, though, a group of former Valdari military officers who want to establish a rehabilitation program for their species." This was one of the unexpected consequences of humanity's victory. Many beings who had served the three empires were genuinely trying to reform and make amends for their past actions. Humanity's policy of offering second chances to those who sincerely sought redemption had won them allies throughout the galaxy. On Earth, Dr. Choi Mi-young stood in her new laboratory complex outside Geneva. The facility was 10 times larger than her old workspace on the Iron Thunder, and it employed scientists from over 30 different species. The combination of human innovation with alien knowledge was producing technological advances at an unprecedented rate. "Doctor," called her assistant, a young Nexus defector named Unit 47 who had chosen the human name James Park. "The new shield harmonics are ready for testing." Dr. Choi Mi-young smiled. "Excellent, James. How are the integration protocols working?" "Out?" James Park had been one of the first Nexus beings to request reversal of his mechanical modifications. The process was experimental and dangerous, but Dr. Choi's team had successfully helped over 3,000 former collective members return to fully biological existence. The integration between human creativity and collective logic systems is fascinating, James replied. We're solving problems that neither species could handle alone. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, engineer Yoon Hye-jin oversaw the construction of humanity's new deep space fleet. The shipyards at Titan had been expanded to accommodate vessels that incorporated the best technology from all the former empires. "How are the new ships coming along?" asked Captain Song Min-jung of the heavy cruiser New Seoul. Engineer Yoon smiled as she looked at the massive vessels under construction. "Better than expected. We're integrating Valdari armor technology with Nexus energy systems and astral propulsion. The next generation of human ships will be 3 times more powerful than the Iron Thunder." Captain Song looked impressed. "And we're building how many of these?" 200 by the end of the year, Engineer Yoon replied, "with another 500 planned for next year. We need to be able to respond to threats anywhere in the galaxy within days, not weeks." Back at Harmony 1, Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon had become the galaxy's chief communication coordinator. His office received thousands of messages daily from across known space, keeping humanity informed of everything happening in their new sphere of influence. "Sir," called Ensign Lee Yu-jin from her workstation, "we're receiving a priority message from the Iron Thunder. Captain Lee wants to speak with Admiral Park." Lieutenant Han activated the communication link. Captain Lee Dae-ho's image appeared on the main screen, with the familiar bridge of the Iron Thunder behind him. "Admiral," Captain Lee said, "we've completed our patrol of the former Astral Dominion Core worlds. The situation is stable, but I wanted to report on something interesting." Admiral Park So-min leaned forward. "Go ahead, Captain. We've discovered that several Astral Dominion worlds contain archives of scientific knowledge going back millions of years. The energy beings may have been arrogant, but they were also incredible scientists. Dr. Choi's team should have access to this information." This was exactly the kind of discovery that made humanity's new role worthwhile. Instead of simply conquering and ruling, they were preserving and sharing knowledge for the benefit of all species. Dr. Choi Mi-young's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, that's incredible news. Astral energy manipulation techniques could revolutionize our understanding of physics." Commander Kim Tae-woo appeared on screen next to Captain Lee. "Admiral, there's something else. We've been tracking the movements of several independent warlords who are trying to fill the power vacuum left by the 3 empires. Nothing we can't handle, but it shows that our work isn't finished yet." This was the ongoing challenge of humanity's new position. The galaxy was vast, and there were always ambitious individuals or groups who thought they could recreate the old empire system for their own benefit. Colonel Shin Dong-wook had been tasked with dealing with exactly these kinds of threats. His Marine units were stationed on bases throughout the galaxy, ready to respond quickly to any signs of emerging tyranny. "Admiral," Colonel Shin reported from his headquarters on the former Valdari world of Drakmor, "we've identified 12 separate groups that are attempting to establish new empire-style governments. Most of them are small-time operations, but 3 could become serious threats if left unchecked." Admiral Park So-min studied the strategic reports. "Recommendations?" "Diplomatic pressure first," Colonel Shin replied. "Most of these wannabe empires will back down when they realize humanity is watching them. For the ones that don't get the message, a show of force from the Iron Thunder usually does the trick. The mere mention of Captain Lee Dae-ho's ship was often enough to end conflicts before they began." The Iron Thunder had become a legend throughout the galaxy, the ship that had defeated impossible odds and changed the course of history. Captain Lee Dae-ho himself was uncomfortable with his legendary status. "Admiral, I've been thinking about the long-term situation. We can't keep using the threat of force to maintain peace forever. Eventually, the galaxy needs to learn to govern itself." Admiral Park So-min nodded. "That's exactly what we're working toward, Captain. The Galactic Assembly is already handling most day-to-day governance issues. Human oversight is decreasing every month as local governments prove they can maintain peace and justice on their own." Ambassador Kang Soo-jin had been instrumental in this transition. Her diplomatic corps worked tirelessly to help former Empire worlds establish democratic governments and fair legal systems. "The transformation has been remarkable," she reported. "Worlds that were ruled by fear for thousands of years are learning to govern themselves through cooperation and consensus. It's not always smooth, but progress is undeniable." Dr. Choi Mi-young had been working on another aspect of the galactic transformation. "Admiral, our medical teams have made significant progress in treating the psychological trauma left by Empire rule. We've helped millions of beings overcome the mental conditioning that kept them enslaved. This was perhaps the most important work being done. The three empires had not just conquered bodies, they had broken spirits and minds. Healing that damage was essential for building a truly free galactic civilization. Engineer Yoon Hee-jin reported on the infrastructure improvements happening throughout human-protected space. "We're establishing communication networks that allow instant contact between any worlds in the galaxy. Trade routes are expanding rapidly, and economic growth is exceeding all projections." The combination of peace, freedom, and technological advancement was creating prosperity on a scale the galaxy had never seen before. Former slave worlds were becoming centers of learning and industry. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now working together on joint projects. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon monitored the daily reports flowing in from across the galaxy. "Admiral, today's summary shows 0 military conflicts in human-protected space. Trade volume up 18% from last month, and 47 new worlds requesting assembly membership." Admiral Park So-min smiled. These were the numbers that mattered, not ship counts or weapon yields, but measures of peace and prosperity. Captain Lee Dae-ho's voice came through the communication system one more time. "Admiral, the Iron Thunder is ready for our next patrol mission. Where do you need us?" "Take a well-deserved rest, Captain," Admiral Park replied. "For the first time in months, the galaxy is peaceful. Your crew has earned some time off. With respect, Admiral," Captain Lee responded. "There's always one more world that needs help. One more tyrant that needs to be stopped. One more species that needs protection. That's what we signed up for." This was the spirit that had made humanity's victory possible. Not just superior weapons or clever tactics, but an unwillingness to give up when fighting for what was right. As the Iron Thunder departed on its next mission, Admiral Park So-min looked out at the stars visible through Harmony One's massive viewing windows. Each point of light represented worlds where beings were living in freedom for the first time in their histories. The galaxy was far from perfect. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Kepler Junction, and the galaxy had settled into what historians would later call the Great Peace. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the observation deck of the Iron Thunder, watching the blue-green planet of New Terra rotate slowly below them. This world had once been a Valdari slave colony, but now it was home to over 1 billion free beings from dozens of different species. "Captain, called Commander Kim Tae-woo from the bridge. "We're receiving a priority message from Admiral Park. The Galactic Assembly wants to honor the Iron Thunder on the 5th anniversary of the victory." Captain Lee smiled slightly. "Tell the Admiral that we appreciate the honor, but we're just doing our job." It was a response that had become famous throughout the galaxy. No matter how many ceremonies, awards, or celebrations were offered, Captain Lee Dae-ho and his crew always gave the same answer. They were just doing their job. That job had evolved significantly over the past 5 years. The Iron Thunder was no longer the only human ship with advanced weapons, but it remained the most important vessel in the galaxy. Its presence in a star system was enough to prevent wars before they started. Pirates, warlords, and would-be conquerors all knew that crossing humanity meant facing the ship that had erased 3 empires from existence. Dr. Choi Mi-young emerged from her expanded laboratory complex aboard the ship. Her research team now included scientists from every major species in the galaxy, and their discoveries had revolutionized technology throughout human-protected space. "Captain," she said, "the new defensive grid around Earth is complete. Any hostile fleet that approaches our home system will face the same dimensional weapons that defeated the 3 empires." Engineer Yoon Hee-jin looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, I've been reviewing the ship's performance logs. We've traveled to over 300 star systems in the past 5 years, resolved 87 potential conflicts, and never had to fire our main weapons in anger. This was perhaps the greatest measure of their success. The Iron Thunder's reputation was so fearsome that its mere presence was enough to maintain peace. Former enemies would stop fighting the moment they learned the legendary human ship was approaching their system." Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon monitored communications from across the galaxy. "Captain, today's reports show continued economic growth in all sectors. The new trade routes we've established are bringing prosperity to worlds that were isolated under the old empire system. On New Terra below them, children from dozens of different species played together in schools that taught cooperation and understanding instead of fear and hatred. These children had never known empire rule. To them, freedom and peace were normal, and the idea of one species enslaving another seemed as ancient and barbaric as it truly was." Admiral Park So-min's image appeared on the Iron Thunder's main screen. She was calling from her office on Earth, where she now served as humanity's Minister of Galactic Affairs. "Captain Lee," she began, "I wanted to personally update you on the state of the galaxy. The Galactic Assembly now includes over 800 member worlds. Trade volume has increased by 4,000% since the fall of the empires, and we haven't had a single major conflict in over 18 months. Captain Lee nodded with satisfaction. "What about the remaining Imperial remnants?" "Neutralized or reformed," Admiral Park replied. "The last Valdari warlord surrendered to Colonel Shin's forces 3 months ago. The final Nexus Collective holdouts have agreed to full biological restoration, and the Astral Dominion survivors have established a peaceful research commune in the Andromeda Galaxy." Commander Kim Tae-woo had been tracking these developments closely. "Admiral, what about new threats? Surely someone is trying to take advantage of the power vacuum." Admiral Park's expression became more serious. "There are always ambitious individuals who think they can recreate the old ways, but they quickly learn that the galaxy has changed. Last month, a group of mercenaries tried to establish a pirate kingdom in the Outer Rim. The moment they heard the Iron Thunder was being dispatched to deal with them, they disbanded and went legitimate. This was the new reality of galactic politics. The Iron Thunder had become more than just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's commitment to justice and freedom. The very mention of its name was enough to end most conflicts before they could escalate. Dr. Choi Mi-young had been working on new projects that went far beyond weapons technology. Admiral, our medical research teams have developed treatments for genetic damage caused by Empire experiments. We've restored normal biology to over 10 million beings who were forcibly modified. Engineer Yoon Hee-jin added her own report. The infrastructure improvements continue ahead of schedule. We now have faster-than-light communication networks connecting every inhabited world in the galaxy. Emergency response times have been reduced to hours instead of weeks. Colonel Shin Dong-wook appeared on the communication screen from his headquarters on the former Imperial capital world of Nexus Prime. Admiral Captain Lee, I wanted to report that the last Imperial monument has been converted into a memorial for Empire victims. The transformation of the old Imperial worlds is complete. The symbolism was important. Where once massive statues had celebrated the power of tyrants, now monuments honored those who had suffered under their rule. Museums taught the history of the Empire period as a warning about the dangers of unchecked power. Lieutenant Han Ji-hoon received an update from the Galactic Assembly. Captain, Ambassador Kang reports that today's assembly session approved the Universal Rights Charter. Every member world has now agreed to the basic principles of freedom, equality, and justice. This charter was perhaps humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization. It established fundamental rights that could not be violated by any government, ensuring that the mistakes of the Empire period could never be repeated. Captain Lee Dae-ho walked to the main viewing port and looked out at the peaceful world below. Admiral, do you think it will last? This peace we've built? Admiral Park So-min considered the question carefully. Captain, I think we've given the galaxy something it never had before. Hope. For the first time in thousands of years, beings across the galaxy believe that their children will live in a better world than they did. Engineer Yoon Hee-jin spoke up. Captain, the ship's computer has been analyzing historical patterns. According to its calculations, the current galactic government structure has a 93% chance of remaining stable for at least the next century. Dr. Choi Mi-young added her perspective. More importantly, we've established the principle that might doesn't make right. The galaxy has learned that the strongest power can choose to protect rather than dominate. Commander Kim Tae-woo brought up the long-term strategic picture. Captain, the new human fleet numbers over 2,000 ships. We have the capability to respond to any threat anywhere in the galaxy within 72 hours. But the real strength of humanity's position wasn't in their ships or weapons. It was in the loyalty and respect they had earned from billions of beings across the galaxy. Children on 1,000 worlds learned human history in their schools. The story of the Iron Thunder's impossible victory had become the galaxy's most popular legend. Captain Lee Dae-ho opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. It was something he did rarely, but the anniversary seemed like an appropriate time. People of the galaxy, he began. 5 years ago, the Iron Thunder faced impossible odds to defend humanity's right to exist. Today, I stand before you not as a conqueror, but as a guardian of the peace we have all built together. His image was transmitted to every world in human-protected space, reaching billions of beings from hundreds of different species. The lesson of our victory was not that humans are superior to other species. The lesson was that all beings have the right to live free from tyranny and oppression. We fought not just for humanity, but for the principles that make civilization possible. On worlds throughout the galaxy, beings paused in their daily activities to listen to the human captain who had changed their lives forever. The galaxy we have built together is not perfect. There are still problems to solve, challenges to face, and work to be done. But for the first time in galactic history, we face these challenges as free beings working together, not as slaves serving masters. Captain Lee's voice carried the authority of someone who had proven his words with actions. Humanity did not seek the role of galactic protector, but we accept the responsibility that comes with our strength. As long as any being in this galaxy faces oppression, as long as any tyrant threatens the innocent, as long as any empire seeks to rise from the ashes of the old ones, the Iron Thunder and the human fleet will be there to stand against them. The message was clear and simple. Humanity would use its power to protect the weak, not to dominate them. Peace through strength, progress through cooperation, and swift justice for those who threaten the innocent. This is our promise to the galaxy, and it is a promise we will keep. As the transmission ended, Admiral Park So-min smiled. Captain, I think that may have been your best speech yet. Captain Lee Dae-ho looked out at the stars one more time. Admiral, I just hope we never have to prove those words in battle again. Engineer Yoon Hee-jin checked the ship's systems one final time. Captain,